Now, an important detail to keep in mind when you look at Luke's genealogy, you may notice that Mary's name is not actually mentioned in Luke chapter 3. Luke 3:23 lists Jesus as the son of Joseph, but not Mary. Now, why is that? Well, our publications have helped us to understand that it was customary back then for the Jews to focus on the men in genealogies. So especially when it came to tracing the bloodline from a grandfather to a grandson through a daughter, as was the case with Mary, why they would often list the daughter's husband's name in place of the daughter's name. So when we read in Luke 3:23 and it lists Joseph as the son of Heli, that evidently means that Joseph was Heli's son-in-law. The bottom line is that the people back then, they understood this custom, and so they knew that Luke's genealogy described Mary's lineage. Now, these two Gospels, the genealogies in each, that of Matthew, that of Luke, they contain other unique and complementary details. For example, Matthew traced Jesus' lineage, but only as far back as Abraham. Now, why is that? Well, we have to remember that Matthew wrote his gospel primarily for a Jewish audience. These were people that were keenly interested and aware of many messianic prophecies. They were interested in seeing how the Messiah would come from Abraham and from David. And so Matthew began his account by emphasizing that Jesus did come from these Bible persons, characters. And it's also why Matthew emphasized David by referring only to him as the king. There were many kings in that lineage, yet Matthew emphasizes David because of the prophecy fulfilled. Now, on the other hand, Luke did not emphasize David. He did not emphasize Abraham. He did go further back than Abraham, though, in the genealogical list. He went all the way back to Adam. And that makes sense because Luke was writing for people of all nations. He was writing even for people who may not have been familiar with Jewish history or the significance of Abraham or David. But the fact is that the genealogies in both Matthew and Luke complement each other. Together they provide powerful evidence that Jesus did fulfill messianic prophecy when it came to his ancestry.
Do they, though? I would disagree. I don't think the genealogies of Matthew and Luke complement each other. I think they actually contradict each other. And this is one of many examples of where the gospel writers aren't in agreement. This, by the way, is Simon Bosioski from the Warwick headquarters staff. He's taking us through the item Messianic Prophecy Fulfilled, Part 1, Descended from King David. And he's commenting on the footage that we saw earlier from the drama where Jesus is remembering his lineage while he's in the wilderness. He's remembering images of David slaying Goliath. He's remembering images of Abraham holding a dagger over Isaac. Lovely family-friendly stuff. And so Simon Bosioski is now revisiting that footage, literally showing a clip of it, and explaining that these genealogies in Matthew and Luke complement each other and are proof that Jesus was the Messiah. And he uses some very interesting wording there. He talks about how the writers of Matthew and Luke were writing for different audiences, and that's why the genealogies are different. Oh, well, it depends on which audience you're writing to. That will reflect on how you record the list of names. I kind of disagree. I think a genealogy is a genealogy. And no matter what audience you're writing to, you want to know what the names are in sequence. And the reason he's fobbing everybody off with this, frankly, cheap, lazy apologetics is because he's hoping he can get away with it. He's hoping people will say, oh yeah, that makes sense, two different audiences. All you really need to do is just think about this for a moment. Was Jesus born of a virgin or not? That's the story that's given to us. Apparently, Joseph had no involvement whatsoever in the birth of Jesus. It was Mary. It was Mary who gave birth to Jesus, and therefore it should have been her lineage that mattered. All of this nonsense about, oh, well, in Jewish times it was the guy, so that's why it's talking about Joseph. Nonsense. Either Joseph was the father of Jesus or he wasn't. And we've learned already, according to the gospel writers, that Jesus was born of a virgin, of Mary, and that Joseph had no involvement. So therefore the genealogies are frankly redundant. It makes no sense that they are there. It's the writers trying desperately to include as much information as possible, even if the information contradicts other information that they've already given. And for me, the cherry on the cake is that the Bible writers of Matthew and Luke can't even agree on who the paternal grandfather of Jesus was. So according to Matthew 1 verse 16, the father of Joseph was Jacob. And according to Luke 3 verse 23, the father of Joseph was Heli. Which is it? Which is it? They can't agree on who Jesus's paternal grandfather is. And as I've already mentioned, it shouldn't even matter who Jesus's paternal grandfather was, who Joseph's father was, because apparently Joseph had no involvement in Jesus' birth.